Aren't you so excited? Oh my god, yes! So hello, my name is Vee. I'm the artist of the studio. This is a lovely Antonio.
I'm the manager here.
Yes. And today we're going to do a little bit of male grooming. And I think that too, because since this is a smaller group, we can be able to kind of shift it more towards the both of you and what your needs are, like what you're thinking about specifically. So what in relation to male grooming are you interested in? Editorial, day-to-day?
I think editorial.
Editorial.
And for video, like on set, like for musical videos or like that.
Okay, awesome.
I would say.
Editorial as well? Okay, awesome.
And a little bit of creativity.
I'm sorry.
And a little bit of creativity.
Day-to-day. Okay, awesome.
So I will say for male grooming, like the day-to-day is really important because you can book like corporate gigs, which will pay you like $1,000 to be there for like 3 hours, and you're putting like nothing on their face.
Yeah.
So the day-to-day, really important.
Yeah. Now I have one client actually, they're like a finance firm, and like I'll get them like once every so often, literally 15 minutes, $750. I do some powder foundation. So male grooming looks very different for a lot of different things. Yes. Of course. Yeah, oh my god, please, absolutely, sure. Yeah, you got it. No worries about it. Which, by the way, what are your names?
Mariana.
Mayana?
Yes.
It's nice to meet you, Mayana.
Ashley.
Ashley? It's so nice to meet you. Okay, amazing. So we're going to get started firstly with, so it's like a couple different types of priming. I'm going to go towards this more from the lens of editorial-based application. Hi. Hey. We're just getting started. Welcome. So we're doing this more in the lens of like the different steps you can want to take out or implement depending on the intensity of the makeup application. So for this one particularly, we're going to go through all of the steps of it, because otherwise male grooming is really quite simplistic.
Yeah.
I feel like for the most part. So we're going to kind of run things through in like the hyper-specific way, and then feel free that these are just like skills that you can go to adjust, take out, put in, depending on what you see fit. So first of all, Antonio, do you look understand?
That's my skincare from this morning.
You okay, please?
Yeah.
Awesome. If you didn't already know, the main reason why that you want to remove whatever is on somebody's skin prior, unless it's maybe only been like it just got applied to them, but even then, maybe just want to remove and just use the thing that you're comfortable with for the most part. So you don't know what their makeup could be, or rather their skincare ingredients inside of it could be. So if you're not familiar with them, it might just be better to take it off because you don't know how it's going to adjust with the cosmetics on top of it. Because sometimes in your experience when like a foundation will fill up or a concealer will fill up and kind of just roll off the skin in some capacity, that's what's happening. The ingredients inside of them are not working with each other. So here I'm just using some micellar water. Some tissue paper. Okay. So now from here, we're gonna go in with like the general regimen of skincare. So we're gonna go in with the moisturizer. If I had an eye cream, we do an eye cream. We can do like the full shebang in that regard. For this, we're gonna just use a pre-release. Because the biggest thing about editorial-based skin, especially for like, and when I say male, I mean like the more like typically masculine concept of makeup application, the biggest thing about it is the naturalness of texture and what the skin actually looks like, because that's how we perceive masculinity to be. That's what is most associated with it. So we want to keep the skin as natural looking as possible, and how we can also do that is making sure that every step of the way we're working in layers of things. So right now we're going in with a really to really moisturize and hydrate the skin. Because then later, we're going to go in with primers to ensure that the hydration is going all the way through. Amazing. Right here. And making sure that everything is absorbed in. Pushing it down. I've had some makeup artists who do like a full like facial massage when they do their skincare. That's really dependent up to you and your comfortability with the client. I tend to just run with some brushes. I feel like it's a little bit easier to remain sanitary in those ways. All right. So now from here, the skin is really just moisturized. From this, for some folks, this might be the end of what they would want their nail grooming to be, right? We're not going to do that, but just so that you know, every single step of this is like something along those lines. We're going to have into planning. We're going to use the Hydro Booster, which is a ginseng-infused hydrating primer. It's primarily water-based. It has some silicones a little bit. It's meant to just really like plump up and hydrate the skin. It's really great alongside this other thing. In Antonio's case, he has very, very dry skin. So I was originally going to go in with shine control into his skin because I tend to like to use all three. A lot of people tend to actually run really dry, especially more like masculine folks. So instead of going with something super dry, we're going to go in instead with a pore minimizer, which is a super silicone heavy product. It has a little bit of a slight demi-matte texture comes out. So going in with the Hydro Booster. Does anyone have any idea where in the face you need hydration the most? Absolutely, yeah. More so like in the perimeter of the face. In the exact like center part is sort of where that main production of sebum is happening. So we want to go with the Hydro Booster. Into the areas that otherwise not really getting that hydro. Whatever is left over. Oh my god, so beautiful. So now from here, we're going to go in with our minimizer, which I think is a really good trick just to think about as well, that when we're thinking about different textures of the skin, it's not just dewy versus matte. There's like demi-matte, there's satin matte, there's a lot of different variations of things. I think that it's really important, especially within nail grooming, what types of like textures you're looking for in the skin. Does that make sense? So I'll just go in from the sides. Because this product really just like settles out the shine, that's why I like to go in with like a little bit of that Hydro Booster, just because I want it to remain sort of on an equal level versus one area is too hydrated versus not. One other thing that I like to do is that when it comes to the under eye area, you're going to see that a big thing about nail grooming in its entirety is a lot more about like color theory in and of itself. And again, playing off of that texture. So taking some pore minimizer and lightly fluffing it into the under eye area provides a really, really great base to sort of give that perfected under eye approach to it. So we're going to work in super thin layers of also. silicone, it's going to diffuse a little bit of that texture that's happening underneath there. So we're just thinking of like super soft levels of enhancement. Wow. How gorgeous. Yay, Antonio. I just want to powder buff to take off any sort of excess moisture that I'm finding in the skin. Powder puffs, I feel like, are very much an unsung hero as like a makeup tool outside of it just being a powder puff. I think it does a really, really great job at picking up some additional moisture that's in the skin that you might not be wanting there, but not fully like mattifying it entirely, or deep filtering it of it. Do you have any questions so far? Awesome. All right. So now I want to go on actually with two other primers. The reason why I'm going with so many primers first is that they're super thin. I want to work on like the smallest amount of product possible. These are also super, super sheer. They're going to just be more so tonal adjusters than anything else. The thing is that we want to use this more in the peachy arena to cancel out this little bit of discoloration that's happening in the eye. Just because we have a little bit more of like blue and purple happening there, we're going to go with the peach to help sort of counteract that and even it out. So we're going to go in with both the grayness reducer as well as the fresh brightener. Which the fresh brightener is more like that, like really like pink, like powder. Do we feel comfortable like with color theory, like color correction in its entirety? Do we? Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. Okay. What makes you think that you're so at it?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes for me it's hard to do that. For example, when it's like a darker skin, if they have different types of colors in the face, they can match the color for me. So.
Got it. Okay. I understand that. I totally understand that.
And usually around the mouth is so common to people have like this skin tension in this area.
Sure.
So much this part for me is tricky.
Sure, totally. I think that it can be really, really tricky if like, how do I say this? Like, if the colors that you're looking at aren't similar to colors that you're used to, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for you to sort of see what the differences are. But if you really do like look at a deeper skin complexion versus a lighter skin complexion, the color tones are going to be the same, but just deeper in value, deeper or lighter in value. It doesn't really change all too much, but where the discoloration might exist, might differ ever so slightly. Maybe additional discoloration around the mouth, like bluer tones. We're talking, like having a deep cooler in the perimeter of the lips and everything. But otherwise, I think that when we begin to think about color theory, like for deeper skin complexions versus like paler skin complexions, it's virtually the same. For the most part, it's really just a deepening of value. Hi, welcome. Hi.
For me, it's more like covering.
Can you give me a little bit more on that?
It has different colors, like green one color.
Bruise coloring is a very it's a very intense thing, yeah. Because it has about like 3 or 4 colors happening at the same exact time. So whenever I do my bruise covering, I end up actually using a lot of these primers, truthfully. The reason being is that they are such sheer pigments of color. And I think that when you're working with like these like sporadic areas of discoloration, like heavy ones, really bruising, the more that you can like fine tune it to a certain area, of like where that intense color is happening, that's gonna be your best thing to do. Because if you just go over with one color, whatever counteracts like yellow is not gonna counteract the purple. So it might just look like washes of color and maybe get muddy. So I think it's like using the correct tone adjusters on specific areas, and then once it's fully negated, going on top of it with a cream foundation as well as a powder foundation. That's what I would
So
say.
you wouldn't put like a concealer after
I mean, truthfully speaking, I would probably, hi, good, how are you? Hi. I would probably say, truthfully speaking, something that is going to be a little bit more of like a drier consistency. Like I personally really like the matte velvet skin foundation. Truthfully, I love our full cover concealer, the older iteration of it, because of its drier consistency. I haven't used a newer one in relation to that one, but the matte velvet skin is my favorite foundation to use for bruise coverage specifically because it's so high coverage, but it also self-sets too. So I think that like when you begin to think about like how the products can work for you versus you just like applying more and more product on top of it, you know? Does that make sense? I feel like I just talked about it. I'm so sorry. So I'm gonna go in now into peachy color corrector. I'm gonna just run that through. So the way that I tend to do my color correcting concealer, you have to think again about actually like specific placement. It's very technical placement. So in this case, I'm kind of using like a little bit of like a fluffier dome brush. I'm only just going in with the very tips of my brush, patting off any excess that I might have. And then we're going to go directly, see how that sort of just pockets right in here. Directly on top of that sort of blue tone of discoloration here. And then just fluff whatever I have left over for the eyelid. Eyelid stuff tends to be really like iffy. I think that when you're doing nail grooming, I think you opt away as much as you possibly can from like shadows and things of that nature. You're trying to make this look not as makeup as possible. But in instances like this, when we're gonna bronze up the skin a little bit more. In this case, you might want to run some color through the lid just to sort of match it in that intensity. Do you see what that's done there? Like the placement of that particular color tone. It's more so just attracting the discoloration that's happening underneath the eye, more so than anything else. Whenever you have leftover, you can always just run through. that in with a powder puff. So you might be thinking, why? You go in with a powder puff again. It's the same exact thing that I said before. You're just trying to pick up a little bit of that additional moisture that's happening. So what I'm trying to do is that, or rather, let me pose this as a question. Have you ever experienced that when you were trying to do color correction, whatever product you applied on top of it just kind of mixed in with it and it sort of just became looking like butt?
Yeah.
Like really, really bad. So the thing that happens a lot of the time is that whatever product that you're using for the color correction, either the layering of it is too thick, it's still wet in some capacity, it's not fully set in whichever way, that whatever products you're applying on top of it is going to just sit with it, right? Yeah. Can you rephrase the question? With like a setting powder and then go on top of it with a foundation like later? Sure, yeah, totally. I think that for myself, I think it's just a technique that didn't really work with my hand, ultimately, truthfully speaking. So I can't really speak too much on that particular technique, just because honestly, whenever I did it, maybe I just never really did it right. It's not really a technique that I've never been able to employ. Do you want to on that?
That technique works very well on skin that can hold that much product. So if you're doing it like the tattoo coverage, then color correction powder, foundation, set it, another layer of foundation, totally fine. You have to think about what your skin can actually hold on to. So like think about your skin in terms of paper. The under eye and the lips are more like tissue paper, the facial skin is more like printer paper, the body's construction paper. Even if you're covering something on the face, it might be able to hold on to it. Under eye cannot hold on to that much weight. So that technique works very well if like I'm doing tattoo coverage, and then I can definitely do a layer powder in between. Your under eye just can't hold on to it. So these technique works better for like under eye split that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so welcome. So now from here, like the skin across the board, like honestly, Antonio has like pretty beautiful skin, like in general. And really like, yeah. So like even looking at Antonio's skin here, like it's relatively nice, like for the most part. You know, this might be another step for you where someone would just want to take the photos at this stage, right? So I'm just gonna do that. And now moving onward, we're gonna work a little bit with some foundation and some concealer. So in this case, I'm going to be using the Super Boost foundation. Are we familiar with this product? Have you ever? Yeah. Yeah, you used it before?
Yeah.
Thoughts? Yeah, love? Period.
I like the applicator.
Yeah, like kind of like a push needle.
Honestly, eat it up. Like it's so stinking cute. So the nice thing about the Super Boost, especially when it comes to editorial specifically, okay. You want to work super sheer. Everything across the board is super sheer. So like, if you have a foundation that you really enjoy, if it's too thick, it's just not going to work out for you a lot of the time with editorial. The reason why I like this particular foundation and like primarily skin tints in their entirety for this type of work is because they are so sheer. They're buildable, but very sheer. So I'm going in with the shade NYFW. So now with this shade, I'm going to just start from the perimeter. Yeah, perfect. The reason why I like to start out in the perimeter is that the main deposit of product, that intensity of the product, I always like to start it on the outside that I can diffuse inward if it ends up being a little bit too severe in whatever capacity. To always think about muting it down. But in this case, it works actually really beautifully. Running it through super specific spots. And really just just like the littlest bit. And when I mean little, I mean like that much, like basically across the face. It's really just depending on what the look is going for. You know, if you want to do the color correction on the facial hair area as well, absolutely go for it. Just because the skin of like the perimeter of the face is not equal to the skin of the under eye, doesn't mean that the treatment of it is like all too different. You know, truthfully speaking, I would say that the perimeter of the face knows a little bit more of a heavier product, whereas the under eye wants a much more thinner product. So you can go with maybe with like your color correcting creams, because in these areas it's a lot more severe a lot of the times, which those areas want that more opaque coverage with it. But that's really good. You know, if it's otherwise, if it's just somebody who has like a very freshly clean face and is going editorial, you're never going to be in that situation. It's always going to be something super sheer that you're just running across the skin to be more of a tonal thing. Maybe a little bit more of a medium coverage. It's never going to be that intensely unless the makeup look is wanting that. Does that help?
For that coverage, will you use this sensei moisturizer or will you just like the foundation? Just like the sensei on hair and then for like where you have discoloration and
So in this case, like truthfully speaking, like the facial hair area, I'm not treating it as discoloration because I want to keep it there. So I'm not going to really like adjust that like in very much in intensity at all. All I'm really doing is just taking a little bit of the foundation and running it through. The reason being is that your skin, you still have skin underneath it, underneath of the hair, you know, that's there and everything. So you want to be able to make sure that you're actually getting the skin that's over there. So this particular foundation has like a little bit more warmth to it. So going through, like if I only went through this area and not this area, you're going to see a little bit of like a tonal discrepancy even more so. So just running it through, it's just to make it more uniform. We're really just reaching for uniformity as much as possible. Would you agree with that? Uniformity is like a big thing.
Yeah, well, honestly, when it comes to grooming, it really is just about lessening the kind of the barriers between colors in the skin. It's not about unifying everything to like one flat color. So I think an important concept to keep in mind is that male grooming isn't feminization just because it's makeup. So it's not doing the full coverage. It's not covering the beard line. It's really just unifying it. And then if you do too much and it starts to look too much like makeup, then it can lean on feminization, or it can lean on you're trying to make them look younger than they are. None of that is the concept behind no grooming.
I agree. Okay. So now I'm going in with the HD Scan Concealer. This is just the regular HD Scan in the shade 2.2 as well as the shade 3.4. These are both neutral shades. So now, when I'm looking at Antonio's face, we've actually diluted a lot of the discoloration that was happening, like in the under eye area, and just everything's pretty harmonious for the most part. This could be another step where you would just want to move along, and send them off to the photographer. But in this case, I'm going to go through and do a little bit of spot concealing and more like specific concealer placements. No flashback, you said?
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's a good question. And I think that also comes into question then, what sort of products are you using that interact with the light in those ways? And what sort of like end product criteria you're looking for. So you're looking for like a mattified skin area, right? So you're product, your powder that you're using should not be having any sort of light refracting or light reflecting properties inside of it. Like what?
Like in silica.
Like in
the ones
silica.
that you'll see in like how you finish your powder that will reflect light.
Yeah. So you want to use something that's like opts away from that and focuses more so on like the setting of the skin. Because finishing and setting are two very different things. It's more so about that product versus the actual concealer itself. Yeah.
Setting.
Yes. I'm going to start applying the concealer first. We're going to put a pin in that for a second, okay? So now I'm going to just go over to here and run this concealer through. This is very much as Antonio's skin color, like exactly. Not going for a brighter look in any capacity, just skin tone. This is the shade 3.4. And the reason why I like this particular concealer as well is because it's just really thin. Like it's just a really nice thin concealer. For some folks, if they have like very intense blemishes or intense spots, you might want to use a higher coverage concealer in those cases. And I didn't really, so we just ran through with a little bit more of that concealer. I really think that was like the one spot. Wow. Yeah, I think that's okay. This one? This one is the 144. So now I'm taking whatever's left over on my brush. And now, yeah, perfect. So you can see that the way that the actual under eye stroke, the way that it's placed, it's going to continue onward all the way through there. You see that line that's sort of happening? It happens all the way through there. Even though your eye stops here, just because that like discrepancy is happening, that is happening all the way through there. Taking your concealer and starting to apply it on the outer perimeter first, and then blending it forward is going to give you a much more natural finish and approach to the concealing of the under eye. Because we don't actually want to negate 100% of the under eye. It's going to look too much like makeup, that's, I'll try to do that. So we still want like a little bit of that discoloration, a little bit like that blue and purple. It just makes Antonio's skin look alive. And I think that's a big thing that we have to think about too, is like, does the skin look alive? Do you get what I mean when I say that? And again, just placing that over right here onto the top layer. You can actually kind of see like exactly what I'm talking about in this spot right here. You see how that like that little bit of luminous is kind of peeking through, just like through that area ever so slightly. That's why we go with the concealer there first. Because this area of the face can go the whole makeup very differently than this area of the face. If I want to pick up a little bit more, just going onto the exact line and up of the concealer. With the color corrector rather. And now, going into the 2.4 shade and taking off a bunch of it. So with the towel, just patting it through. I'm still using the same brush, just pat it out. When you're working on the same person. if you're changing models, do not do that clean with your brush. But you want to use at least a little bit of whatever is left over inside of the brush because it kind of helps support the blending. The reason why I want to take the majority of that is because I don't want that color to be the main thing that's happening inside the brush. So I'm going to go in now with that 2.4, knock off a little bit of that pigment, and start to make that corner. Okay. So now from here, I've got my color correction and my concealing and my foundation. I'm going to now take a step back and I'm going to look at Antonio's face from a distance. Antonio, can you turn your head up? And now can you turn it to the other direction? And now look straight ahead. The reason why that I'm wanting to look at Antonio's face from over here is that from a distance, you notice see tones a lot more specifically. When you get like up close into somebody's face, the tones that you might be seeing sort of get like, they don't necessarily disappear, but you're focusing on different things. When you step back a little, you notice a little bit of the coolness that's happening in Antonio's chin and upper lip area, right? But the under eye area is relatively corrected. You know what I'm saying? Is that? No.
When you set the under eye, I mean the lips, is there like concealer and makeup under?
I'm so sorry.
When you set the lips?
The lids?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so throughout the lids, really, it was like barely any product. Like barely any product whatsoever. It's that those particular products are going to come up actually in a second. These ones I would recommend more so using than necessarily this. Because the reason being that I say that, you could do both if you wanted to. If you wanted to use concealer and then powder bronzer, because that's what we're going to use next. If you wanted to, you could. But the thing is about like cream products on the eyelid specifically is that the lights are hot. Models are going to stand there and like stare at a light for a really long time. They're going to start to, face is going to get oily and whatever. Their eyelids are going to start to break. You just don't really want to mess around too much. And the thing is that you run the risk if you use too many products on the lid, it's going to start to make it look like makeup. So, you just use the powder again, move it across into the skin. I just want to absorb any additional moisture that was coming up from utilizing the product wall. So now from here, I actually want to go in with our powder bronzer. This one is in the shade 35, Lively Almond. Bronzer or powder foundation is really going to be your best bet. Like whenever it comes to male grooming specifically, this type of male grooming, like this is for the super like undetectable day-to-day type of deal, like having a celebrity client or having a high-profile client. Like this might be the type of makeup look that you might do on somebody, right? A lot of the time for editorial stuff, you really will just be utilizing a powder bronzer, powder foundation, and maybe a concealer. Just more so wanting you to continue to think about the different ways in which that male grooming can look. It doesn't just have to be this one particular way. Bless you. Okay. I'm taking the bronzer and I am starting it right at the temple and across the top of the cheekbone. Does anyone know what bronzer is meant to emulate? Tan, right? The areas of the face that actually interact with the sun. typically when it comes to more like masculine makeup presentations, using bronzers and things that have a little bit more of that warmth inside of them is much more complementary on this sort of facial structure than going in with a blusher, which kind of begins to teeter, no matter what, into a more feminized application. So now I go back in and look at brush a little bit more. Because we still want to add sculpt.
So you're just keeping the one
I'm sorry?
you're just keeping the bronzer
In this area, yeah. Because if you look at the face, just like the way that the light is hitting across it, this whole area right here, where the light is shining off, that would be where the sun would be hitting it the most, right? So as Antonio moves and everything, this whole area would then kind of become that. We also don't want to forget the actual nose area specifically. And for this type of application, it's really dependent on like, what you want for your final makeup look. If you want a more, what's the word? Like a sheen across the skin, using a powder bronzer that has a little bit more of like that shimmering side of it, it'll be really beautiful. Light refraction is really helpful for areas that might have like texture, just to add on to that sort of airbrushing to the skin. In this case, this particular bronzer, I would say it's more so on like the denim side. It still really lets like skin pull through. And I think again too, it's really important to sort of think about this like, where has this person been? Like when you're doing this kind of makeup, because why are you doing this? It sort of helps you to sort of keep that in mind. So Antonio, get out of the sun. You know, doing something. I don't know. Now with the same brush, I'm going to go in with the HD Skin and Perfecting Pressed Powder. Take this brush. And you press it into the center of the face. The thing is with Grooming too is that making the skin look too hydrated, it just kind of begins to look sweaty, or it begins to look a little bit oily. It doesn't really tear into like that beauty texture that we might be like used to, like the super glam, you know, like reflective sort of skin. In this case, we want to keep the skin more so on the matte, demi-matte. Translucent powder? You'd be able to utilize translucent powder if you want to. It's really just dependent on the particular type. If you're using a finishing powder, translucent powder, or a setting powder specifically. Because setting powder is going to interact a little bit differently with than finishing powder. The same thing that she was asking for, yeah. So when it comes to setting powder and finishing powder, the question from earlier, yeah. The difference between the two of them is that setting powder is intended to set the makeup. It's like quite literally in the name of it, which made me feel kind of dumb when I actually found that out. So it made me feel like, whoa, that was really cool. The finishing powder is anything thereon afterward. You have already set the makeup. You have used anything else that you would have before, because the finishing powder is just meant to kind of veil the skin that has been already set with another powder. If not, I really wouldn't recommend to use it as a setting powder. This finishing powder tends to have like a little bit more of like a light reflecting property inside of it. Like if I'm not mistaken, I think Hourglass's ambient powder, I think is technically
It's a finishing powder.
It is a finishing powder. Are we familiar with Hourglass's ambient powder? Yeah. You know how it's like super highly reflective, like inside of the pan itself? Or not reflective, rather, it's like that sheen that's happening inside of it. That one is a finishing powder. So that one is meant to sort of dust across the skin to make it look like skin again. Yeah. So it's like adding a little, like that touch of that shine back to the skin sort of makes it look human, a little bit more airbrushed, so on and so forth. Yeah. Whereas setting is specifically meant to sort of
Launch everything in.
exactly.
It's meant to remove the extra moisture from creams and liquids, whereas, like we were saying, fish oil is meant to kind of put all over, and the finishing concept is a blurring concept. So it's got mica and silica. It's going to diffuse any lines of demarcation. It's going to blur anything like pores. But the thing about finishing powder is because it has mica and silica, you cannot set makeup with it. If you've ever seen those celebrity snapshots of J-Lo or Jennifer Aniston where they have the crazy white cast, that's the misuse of finishing powder. Setting powder can be on anybody, finishing powder cannot be used on anybody.
Finishing powder on body cannot be.
It can be used on everybody, and it should not be used to set wet makeup.
Yeah.
Flash photography and finishing powder are not always best friends.
Yeah. So now I'm going to just go through the main central area with that face powder. I know you might be looking at the brush one like, Jesus Christ, like, why are you using such a big brush? The reason being is that I've been using it for everything else across the face. The mixing of the pigments onto the brush itself sometimes just works better in that way. So for this, I'm just sort of using the same thing across the board. Because I want the skin, again, to sort of look uniform in everything that I'm doing across it. Everything's sort of mixing together.
Yes, they are big faces.
That's not what I'm saying. Gosh, so now in this case, so I wanted to show you powder products first. I also wanted to show you a step that you'd be able to do. Say that if you had forgotten a cream step specifically, it kind of actually goes alongside with the thing that you were talking about before, like using powder originally and then a cream product on top. So this is a way that you can sort of do that. But say that like you forgot to add something and you wanted to go back into it and add in something. So like for myself, I want to go in and add a little bit of the cream sculpt right in the back area over here. And truthfully speaking, I forgot that I was going to do that. So I'm going to show you how to adjust that without disrupting everything that we've done. Because so far we've used setting powder and everything. We've technically set it, right? It's a soft set, but it's a set. So so now, just going in, this is the Mist and Fix 24-hour setting spray. From there, going in with the cream product that I want to put in the top here, which this is the 600 Anywhere Caffeine and the Artist Color Crayons, I think that are the Artist Color Crayons. So now going in with the setting spray first, as kind of re-emulsified. This is the one thing that I found with the Makeup Forever one specifically, is that it has a little bit of a half-life onto the skin, where it really moisturizes everything before it fully settles down and sets everything. So like right here, like you could still really work with it because it's emulsified everything underneath of it. So now from here, I'm going to go in. A little bit. Yes. A little bit of the foundation that we were using earlier, and mixing it with that color. The reason being that we're using the foundation to mix alongside of it is because this color is already happening on Antonio's face now because I've used it as the concealer prior. It's going to just help match even more so. We still want it to look soft and natural across the skin. So now from here, this might have like set down again. So I'm just spray one more time. This one's 1, 2, 3. Okay. Does everyone know when I was spraying with you? Do we have any thoughts about that? No. I love that you're thinking that way. No. It's actually a lot simpler than that. Huh? Not even that. Sometimes spraying somebody's face scares them. You know, it startles them, like quite literally.
Yeah, if they hear the click and immediately get hit in the face with spray, it like causes them to react. Whereas like if you spray it up and hear the click and then the cascade's down, now they're comfortable when you spread them directly in the face.
Exactly. So this is just a good way to have them like continue to feel comfortable the entire time. Because again, makeup is a service that we're providing to these people, you know. So that's a really great way that sometimes you might not even think about, you know, but yeah, starting from the top. You might waste one spray, but it's fine. Like it's really, it's fine. So I'm taking that product and right into this pocket back here. And fluffing that through. And I want to take this as well into the jaw area. Running it through the ears.
I'm kind of confused with the crayons. Are they like
I'm sorry?
brushes? I'm kind of confused with the crayons.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't used that product yet.
Sure.
So are they like brushes? What?
Sure. So the artist color crayons come actually in sculpt shades, contour shades. They also come in blush shades as well as highlight shades also. So it's like the waterproof formula exists for all three types of cosmetics that you want to go for. It's just this one specifically just happens to be for sculpting. That's why the color tone of it is what it was. Yeah.
If you look at the bottom of the packaging though, it'll have 3 photos, one of a face, one of an eye, and one of a lip. It lets you know which one you can use where. Like this one could be used anywhere on the face, but like the highlighter ones with the glitter can't be used in the lips. The ones that have like too much red in the blushes can't be used in the eyes because they can stain. But these are honestly multi-use sticks. You can use them where you want to use them.
Yeah. Completely.
Like I've used as an eyeshadow myself before. Worked great.
Now you can see that even just like with that little bit like right there, it's like really cupped the cheek coming in from the side. And the other side. Something in that color. Across the cheekbone. Into the back area of the jawline. Open that back through. Maybe plugging into the ears just a little bit. I think that's a really important thing to remember too. The ears are part of the face. Ears are part of the face. No, exactly. No, exactly. So I'm gonna go in with just like the actual color of the crayon again. And just right at the base of the cheekbone. And I'll take a little bit of what I have and just fluff it through the eyes. So now, the one thing that I will say is that if it's a waterproof product, you can absolutely run it through the lids in mailroom. The reason being is that waterproof will not crease. The consistency and the texture of it, of the formulation of it, it's intended to not do that. So the sculpt shade, we're going to just fluff it through the eye layer. Go a little bit on the sides of the nose. The other thing about male grooming too that you want to kind of think about is angles and how you are structuring those angles specifically. It's not the same as like the feminizing makeup styling that we tend to run into, where it's more so patting shapes upward to be more rounder. When it comes to more masculine features, we're thinking about harder angles. So when I say that, the reason why I say that is you're going to go ahead across the nose super lightly, super duper lightly. I think the nose is like the biggest tell if it looks like it's too much makeup or if it looks like makeup at all. It's always going to be onto the nose area. I just wanted to define the bone structure a little bit more and sharpen and angle the nose as much as I can without it looking like makeup. So now we've done that. So now go back in with that powder bronzer. Just to touch up overweighting where we have applied bronzer. Vee, you're applying that bronzer everywhere. And I would say, yeah. In this case, it just helps out with the overall blending of everything together. You really don't want it to look like blush highlight sculpt. You want it to sort of look like hyper uniform with each other. So I'm gonna go back in with that face powder. Also, a fun little trick too is that if you find that you are going through product a little bit too much or a little bit too fast, picking up a little bit of product and then banging it onto the back of the table will allow some of the pigment to actually disperse through the brush, so you won't have to use as much because it'll slowly move through the bristles. But now this is overpacked, so give me a second. So just fluffing it through this area first. Because again, I want things to look like softly matte. I still want Antonio's skin to look like his skin. And that it's like still like hydrated and nice and a little bit of life to it. You know, we don't want to like dehydrate it entirely. Okay. So now from here, we're going to go into the brows. I'm going to use the Aqua Resist Brow Fixer. This is in the shade 25. It's just more so like a cool tone brown, like a taupey brown. These types of products for like male grooming are really, really necessary because a lot of the time you're not needing massive amounts of any sort of product for this kind of thing. You just want a little bit of shape, a little bit of structure, take a little bit of volume to the brow. You want to try to keep it as natural as possible. So I'm just taking my color halfway through the brow and the perimeter of it.
I will say if you find yourself taking on more male grooming clients, having a full arsenal of like tinted brow gels is going to be your best friend to also fill in their beard lines.
Very true, beard lines. Very, very, very true.
Because like this, like if I actually like, I don't know, I've been a hair care ever, but if I did, this would match my beard line. I could clean it up and identify any areas that like are not quite as full as the other.
That's a really good point. I know.
You'll know the reason.
So I see that over here. I just want to add a little bit more information. Go for that rest through the rest of the brow. We don't want it to look too heavy of a product. We just want it to look nice and kept. say that you didn't want it to be so heavy in the product at all, you just follow that through a second time with an empty spoolie brush. This can help soften everything out even more so. So now someone like Antonio, who has like already thick and super present eyebrows, going in with too much eyebrow product, it's going to make it look very clearly heavy in a way that doesn't feel natural to the face or to the skin. So I would always suggest going less is more for folks who have thicker eyebrows or like more heavier set eyebrows. Awesome. Okay, so we've gone through the brows. So that's really just like what the brows is, honestly. We've gone through the face. I think we're gonna go through. Yeah. So the one, are we familiar with the skill of tight lining? We're familiar with it. Do we feel comfortable with it? We don't. Okay, then we'll talk more about it after. But today I'm not going to be doing it on Antonio, just because it's a really irritating thing to have to take off after, and I don't want to do that for Antonio. Tight lining is just across the lower lash line, or rather the lower waterline of your eye. So in this case, it would be very close here. I'll be using a brown for Antonio. In male grooming, tends to run browns across the board. Maybe a gray if you mix it with another shade of brown. That's really it. Browns are always going to be softer and more complementary onto someone's face. But with that being said, I still want to give a little bit of something, a little bit of love to Antonio's lashes, because the reason why that we go in with that little depth of color would be to sort of accentuate not only the actual eye shape and structure, but to make it look like it's more fuller, thicker eyelashes across. Antonio actually already has some pretty great eyelashes, so we're going to just emphasize them a little bit actually with the brow gel that we were using before. Fine, where I put it. Tight line you mean on the eye, right?
Yeah.
With like a gel pencil?
Yeah.
Or like a cream? Or like what are we thinking? All of them have sanitary practices. It really, you just have to be savvy in the type of practices that you're engaging with. If you're using a brush with a more like cream-based liner or like a gel-based pot liner or something, just making sure that your actual eyeliner itself isn't being double dipped into. You are like super meticulous about the sanitation of it. You are making sure that whatever brushes are going inside of it are sanitized prior to actual application. And then with a pencil, it would be more so like I've seen other makeup artists do this where they'll like crack off of the very top, the front tip of it, and then they'll resharpen it to be like the newer bit, the newer point to it. Because the thing is, when it comes to creams, it's not the easiest to disinfect. So that's why a lot of the time you just kind of want to do, just like kind of like crack it off, like break off like from a pencil or something. Because truthfully speaking, like if you could be able to get those same formulas in like a little like pot thing, probably would be a better option. But because it is the way that it is, I would always recommend that. So they're just different ways for sanitation in their entirety. Yeah. I'm just taking this and fluffing it through. Antonio's lashes.
And is this mascara or brow gel?
It's brow gel. Yeah. So the brow gel has a little bit of a tint to it. Because again, when it comes to like male grooming, we don't want to overemphasize by using a black mascara or even sometimes a brown mascara. Mascara eye looks don't really tend to bode so well for a more masculine look a lot of the time. So using a brow gel to give a little bit of definition and emphasis to those areas are going to be really beneficial for you. I'm going to go in one more time, another skin. I'm going to go in onto the under eye. That was the way. You might be like looking at this and being like, oh my god, like it doesn't even look like that there's anything really going on. I think that that's the point, you know, when it comes to this sort of like makeup styling. It's like super thin, really sheer tone adjustments, you know, across the board. And even in this case, we're just adjusting the lashes just ever so slightly to provide the smallest bit more definition. Just a little bit. Okay, so now this is a controversial part, which is, I mean, not really. It's it's doing like lip products onto masculine features. In this case, we are going to be using up and down tan and the artist color pencil. I would really just say it's super dependent on the client that you're having in the chair. For Antonio today, Antonio has a really beautiful cupid's bow area at the top of her lip, so I want to emphasize it ever so slightly, but we're not going to go through the entire lip with this as like a full lip color or anything. It's purely just meant to emulate as much as possible his natural lip color to just sort of expand that ever so slightly. Just walking this lip. And now you're going to take a brush and we'll just feather this in. And this is really just like how I sort of do lips across the board, especially when it comes to male grooming, because it's just super, it's meant to be just very soft and diffused, no matter what. It's close enough to Antonio's natural lip color that it doesn't look too overstated, and it's just very gently making them seem ever more close. Okay. So now, for the most part, I'm actually going to take a step down really quick. Yeah, I think that that's like pretty much where we go. It's not too often that you're going to have like someone request therapy gloss onto the face or onto the lips. I'm going to show you something. So a lot of the times, like when it comes to masculine faces, you never really know who's going to be like sitting into your chair, what kind of skin texture that they might have. Highlighter can help sometimes, like with bringing some light back into the skin, but it can catch some really intense texture. So now when we're thinking about how to bring light back into the skin or like light back into the skin, say that this might be an editorial for like, they want a little bit more of like that shimmered cheekbone, of like that wet cheekbone. Take a little bit of Super Boost. This one is in a big shade. I'm just leaving those. So now, like, just taking a moment to actually look at the texture of what the cheekbone looks like and the temple looks like. Going in with a little bit of gloss. In this case, we're going with a lip gloss. If you have a face gloss that you prefer, go for that. No worries at all. I'm just using it in this case. This particular lip gloss is I'm using it because it's the way it interacts with light. I think it's really beautiful. So. Starting it across the top of the cheekbone. Running this a little bit. You see the of like skin texture that it's given that now, like the sheen that it has across the skin, where it's not makeup, that it's just how light is interacting with something that has a little bit more moisture inside of it. So you can get both of the experiences, this side from that side, or rather the softly set side, and this side is using face gloss. I'm sorry? Always. It always will. I could.
For like an editorial, if you're doing a glossy look, that's going to be some of your final shots for the day.
Yeah, always make sure that those are the last shots for the day. Because anything that is of a gloss, it's just a lot of emollient factors inside of it making this product. So anything that's underneath of it is going to get disrupted no matter what.
Yeah.
So
I mean, probably have tried from those ardent to enough of my hours, it's good disruptive.
yeah, it's like getting this. I think did you do like a testing for a while?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I've tried like 17 different glosses, they all do the same thing.
Yeah.
They're all going to disturb it. So make sure those are your final shots for the day.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, so this is the finished makeup look. Yay, oh my god, wow. Of course, if you all have any questions about anything at all, before we head on downstairs.